Hey guys, I'm the 50s Kid. This is an E53 BMW X5, and I'm told it's got a bad rear driver's side wheel bearing. I haven't test driven it yet, but we're gonna go take it out on the road. I'll film that and see if we can hear what that sounds like from inside the car, hopefully pick up what side it's on. Probably not through the camera, but I'll be able to hear that myself. And then I think I'll come back and we'll put it up on all fours, and I'll see if I can place the camera at both rear wheels and see if the camera can pick up that one is worse than the other. But anyway, let's get started. All right, we are out attempting to reproduce this wheel bearing noise. Apparently it's coming from the left rear. So the noise is sort of like a wah 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 kind of sound. We're gonna get on the highway, see if we can hear it a little better. Yeah, I can definitely hear it now. I suspect it's on the left. We're gonna make sure, we're gonna confirm it for sure. So let's do that. Well, I'm not sure how great that test came out, but I can tell you from inside the car, there's no doubt about it, it's the driver's side rear wheel bearing. So we're going to go ahead and change it. So these are some specialty tools that you're going to need in order to complete this job. In order to press the wheel hub off of the out of the bearing, what you need is a large bearing separator to act as a plate that goes behind it. And this one that I have is actually part of a different kit that I got at Harbor Freight. It's a larger kit. You'll see it in the video. And I had to go out and get these hardened bolts to replace the ones that it came with because they weren't long enough in order to get this thing to go wide enough to fit around the wheel hub. But anyway, that goes behind the wheel hub, and then you'll need 2 bolts in place of your wheel lug. Normally you use the wheel lug nuts, but the wheel lugs on this car aren't long enough. So I had to go out and buy these M14 by 1.5 thread pitch bolts. They're about 50 millimeters long, and I had to round the tips of them on a bench grinder. And then be aware that I also had to run one of them with run one of these into a die, into an M14 by 1.5 die in order to correct the threads, because I just kind of galled them up a little bit. So just be aware. But you'll see why you need to taper the ends when later on in the video. You also need a 36 millimeter 12-point socket for getting the axle nut off. You need an E14 for getting the fasteners that hold the bearing onto the bearing carrier off, and you need an E12 in order to get the fasteners that hold the axle onto the differential. To press the wheel hub back on, I went and got a 3/4 inch by 10 6-inch long threaded bolt here. This is just a grade 5, and I later found the same like coupling nut to go with it, and it's a 1-inch wrench on here, and I think it's a 1 1/8 socket that goes on here. So you might need that socket if you don't have it. This is a 1-inch inner diameter and 2.5-inch outer diameter flat washer to go on the back of the bearing and press right on the inner race. And then these are just some 7/8 inch interior diameter and 2-inch exterior diameter washers to fit on either side. And you'll notice this one kind of caved in a little, so try to find hardened washers if you can. I'm going to go back and get some hardened washers for next time. But this worked really well. Just having a grade 5 bolt worked really well for me. So all I need to do is take this back and I think I'm going to get just their large bearing separator, which is just this by itself, because I've looked around and I think that comes with long enough bolts, and it's also a little bit larger as well. So I'll be getting that. First, we have to remove the axle nut, and you can see that it's staked in on either side so it doesn't come loose. So you need to unstake it with a chisel and a hammer. Normally, to get your axle nut off, If you don't have like an air ratchet or an electric ratchet like this, you can do it two ways. One, you can have a friend put their foot on the brake. Sometimes if you've got a slotted rotor, you can stick an Allen wrench in between the caliper bracket and in through one of the slots, and that'll pin the rotor in place. But this is not a slotted rotor. It's just it's a non-slotted rotor. Another way would be to actually knock the center cap out of the tire, put the tire back on, and take the vehicle off of the jack stands so that the tire is pressing down on the ground. And then you can use your brake. You can actually use the handle of your floor jack to slip over a ratchet, and that'll give you enough leverage to get it off. Yes, I know it's not an impact socket, but I don't care. Let's see how pressed in the axle actually is. Yeah, so it's loose enough. If it wasn't loose, what you would do is you would take the axle nut and put it on backwards. Get it started, a couple of threads, and get it even with the end of the axle nut. That way you have more surface to hit on, and that way you're not mushrooming out the end. So it's always best to use impact tools if you have them. So that just comes right out. So we're going to take the brake caliper and caliper bracket off as one unit. It's a 16. The caliper bolt is right here, and there's another one on the top. A little extension for up here. There we go. And we've got room to just set this right on top here. Looks like there's a little bit of a tear in the brake hose, so we should probably look into replacing that, but I will do that in a separate video. Some spiders may have been harmed in the making of this video. If your rotor is rusted on, give it a couple of taps till it pops loose like that. Mine was already loose. So you just need a number 5 Allen wrench to undo these hold downs. They're just kind of spring loaded there. So it's just a quarter turn kind of thing. And I want to try to get these shoes out of here without messing with the adjuster. That way I won't need to readjust them later. Let's try to lift this spring out. There. Get that spring off. There's the little adjuster mechanism. The little adjuster screw goes down. There. Just kind of slips off that spring. But anyway, you want to put your parking brake shoes, just keep everything in alignment, put it down on the ground. That way you know what goes where. So now we need to get our wheel hub off. To do that, I'm going to use the large bearing adjuster, or the large bearing separator, as a backing plate. Hopefully these bolts are long enough here. Well, they might not be. This one might not be big enough. Well, that bums me out. Well, this project's at a standstill for tonight. I'm gonna need a different tool. All right, so it's a new day. The sun's still out, so I can make use of that light. Now we can see things a lot better. So I went to Home Depot and got some 1/2 inch by 6 inch long bolts to replace these ones that the kit came with. So now that I've got these bolts, they're long enough to hold this onto the back of on front of the bearing behind the wheel hub. What we've got here is that the old bearing is bolted to the carrier behind here, right? And the tool is going to give us, it's going to go on like that. The tapered end is going to go back against the bearing, and it's going to give us a greater surface area with which to press out the wheel hub. And in order to press out the wheel hub, my plan was to use the lug studs to actually do that, but unfortunately they won't go through far enough in order to press against the this surface. They're not going to be long enough, so I needed some new bolts in order to do that. Okay, so these are the new lug studs that I got at Home Depot. They are M14 by 1.5 thread pitch by 50 millimeters long. So these are going to be long enough to press against the bearing separator. These bolts, by the way, were $150 each. I got 3 of them at Home Depot. And these long bolts, they were also about $150 each, and I think the nuts were about 20 cents. So no big deal, you know? So I'm not really gonna tighten these all the way because this is really not, it's, you know, it just needs to kind of be held in place. The studs are gonna push against it. I'm gonna put a little bit of oil on each one. So I'm gonna try doing this with a wrench just cause. You just do a little bit at a time. The reason I didn't want to use my impact gun with this is because I wouldn't be able to tell how many times each bolt was turning, and I just want to do this evenly. These bolts are actually bending, and I might be grabbing onto the hub too closely because we need to be able to pull out the inner race, and I don't want my bearing separator to cover that inner race because this inner race is going to come out along with the wheel hub, so we need to be grabbing the outside here. So I need to make sure that I'm doing that. That's probably bad. So yeah, well, that was embarrassing. I forgot to use hardened bolts when I did that. So, oh well, you know, as you guys know, if you're a regular viewer of my channel, you know that I'm not afraid to hide my mistakes. So I'll leave that in as a good lesson to use grade 8 bolts. If it's SAE, you need to use grade 8. If you're in Europe or whatever, you're using metric, then you need to use grade 10.9 bolts. But anyway, I'm also going to go ahead and taper the ends of these bolts that I was using to screw into the wheel lug holes to pull the wheel hub out, because the threads on the outside ended up getting kind of messed up a little bit, and they also messed up the threads in the wheel hub a little bit as I was pulling them out. It took a long time to kind of get them out. So I'm going to taper the ends of them so that won't happen on my bench grinder. And I'm also going to chase the threads in the wheel hub with a tap just to make sure that they're all right. So anyway, let me fix my mistakes and then we'll hopefully get this done the right way. So it occurred to me that I should probably chase these threads with a die. Already done the other 2 bolts. I think this one's going to be the hardest one. The first one, the threads were perfect. Second one, had to do a little work. The third one, looks like I have to do a little as well. So these 2 are the good ones. These 2 are only kind of messed up right at the end. Honestly, I could get away with not even doing anything to them probably. This one is really, really messed up. So I'll just start with these 2. Okay, so I've chased all the threads. They're all good. Everything's repaired. So as we can see, the outer bearing seal, I guess, is actually pulled out from the outer edge of the bearing, but right now my tool is sort of blocking it. It's on the inside of it. It needs to be a little wider. But that's as far as these bolts will go. I'm honestly pretty shocked that it didn't just come out all the way. So I can take this plate off now. Don't really need to, but it just kind of gives me a little more room to see what's what and kind of get tools behind here. And I'm gonna make a cut at an angle like that. That way I don't actually cut into the metal of the wheel hub here or here. And I don't want to cut this all the way through. I just want to cut into it enough to weaken it, because then I'm gonna hit it with a chisel and just crack it free. Safety gloves. I've already got my safety glasses on. Here we go. Cool. I felt that. Yeah, that's off. But I need to just Whew. And yeah, you can see I marred. I cut into the wheel hub just a tad, but honestly, it's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. And the new bearing will cover any damage I did. So my impact driver seems to be having some issues, and I'm wondering if just good old leverage will do the trick. I've got my long-handled socket wrench, and it looks like the parking brake is just not strong enough to hold it, which kind of blows. It would be really helpful if we could slip a screwdriver or an Allen wrench in through the brake rotor on the other side. That would just kind of lock it in place. Ideally, I need someone to come along and put their foot on the brake. But then again, now that I have the brake off of the rotor on this side, that wouldn't be good because the piston would just pop right out. So it occurs to me that I should have done this before I did anything else. But oh well. What I might need to do is get like maybe like a rubber strap wrench would work, or if I just kind of hit this really quick, simulate those impacts, that might work, or the wrench might slip off. Okay, now I've got a bunch of extensions, and I've switched to my larger impact wrench, which is the equivalent of like a 1/2 inch pneumatic impact wrench, and I think that'll do the trick. Yeah, without a problem. So that's kind of half cheating, I guess. But I would definitely recommend that if you don't have impact tools, do this before you take the brake rotor off and all of that. And you would have to get up behind here because you wouldn't have room if the brake rotor was still on. But you would need to have both brake pads still on, both brake rotors still attached in order to have somebody step on the brakes in order to get this thing to stop from moving, because the parking brake is just not enough to keep it from turning. Here's a tip. Put the axle nut back on and use it to rotate the axle around until you get the next nut right at the right spot where you need it so you can reach it. That's it. That's all 6. You know, it occurs to me that you can't do this trick without having an impact to get it back off. Because if you just try to use a normal socket wrench, the axle is going to move with you. So you would need a way to hold it in place, possibly like a strap wrench or something like that. Impacts just make everything easier. We've got the exhaust in the way of this coming out. So my hope is maybe we can pull it out through this open cavity right here. Hopefully this will come out and bend enough, but something tells me not so much, and I might have to drop the exhaust, at least the exhaust in the rear right here. I'm hoping I don't have to do that, but we'll see. Let me get the wheel speed sensor off of here. Kind of a delicate component, don't want to get it damaged. I believe I'm replacing this as well. One of these 2 wheel speed sensors is kind of intermittent. So I'm going to use my floor jack to lift the suspension up until it's about level with the axle. Right about there. I suspect that it's already kind of loose and we just need to give it a couple of taps, love taps with a hammer, and I was right. And I'm also correct in that there is just not enough room to get this past the exhaust, which really sucks, man. I was kind of hoping I'd be able to do this, but looks like there is no choice. Gotta lower the exhaust. Honestly, the best place to lower it would be back here where it connects to the front part of the exhaust. It's harder because you have to remove 2 bolts, which might be rusty for you, but I'm thinking maybe that's gonna be a better place. So I think I'll do that. When the exhaust drops, it's just going to fall on the bumper back here. It's 13 in the back and 14 in the front. Cool. I think that probably did the trick for me there. And since I took it off in the back, I've got clearance to push it back a little. And now we're good. Okay, now I got all the room in the world to pull this axle out. So looking back through, those are the 4 bolts that I need to remove, and this camera shot right here is just way too awkward. I can't do this without just holding the camera and the light in place, so you're just gonna have to use your imagination when you see me do this. So I'm gonna be using my long handled ratchet, so I have leverage, a 1-inch extension, and my E53 socket. And I'm gonna be going underneath back through here just to get access. This seems to be the way I can get access to all 4. Okay, these things are on there super tight. Make sure you get that socket on there correctly use an E-Torx socket. I can't stress that enough. You can't use like a 3/8 inch 12-point drive socket on this. That just, I wouldn't do that. I've had experience messing up E-Torx bolts. You gotta use the right socket. I got mine at Harbor Freight for a couple bucks and they served me well. There. Okay. There's one. Yeah. Probably wouldn't have hurt to hit these with some penetrating fluid, by the way. That penetrating fluid did the trick. Ow! Yay. Whew. Finally, I'm betting that needs a love tap. There you go. Love tap. So, there's the destroyed bearing, there's the rear bearing race. It was right there. So, alrighty, here's our new bearing. There is no up or down or anything. So let's get one of these bolts in. I'm gonna get the bolts in, but I'm not gonna tighten them just yet. I'm gonna make sure I get the wheel hub on here first. Make sure that can be done successfully, and then I can come in and tighten them from the back, because I'll still have access. It's not going to matter if there's a big wheel hub here. The manufacturer of this new bearing was FAG, and as far as I could tell through my research, that is the OEM brand, so that's the one that I got. My plan to press the wheel hub into the new bearing involves a really long, really large 3/4 inch bolt with some flat washers. I've got this one size washer to fit on the inside of the wheel hub there. I couldn't find one big enough to fit on the outside, but this is the ideal place to press. This is where like a bearing cup would be pressing, but I think that'll be fine. For the back, I've got this larger washer because that fits right over the inner bearing race just perfectly, and that's gonna press on the back side. Also another smaller washer to go along with it, just to make sure it grabs the washer properly. So, be nice if I could get this started a little. I've already coated the surface of this with anti-seize just to make it go on a little easier. And then before I put this bolt through, I'm just going to put some oil on the threads. This way we just have plenty of lube. And I'm trying to get the washer centered as best I can. Okay, I believe I have it. I need a wrench. I need an open end 1/8 inch wrench in order to grab that. And it definitely has to be a wrench with it's angled with an angled head, so I can just hold it back on there and 12 point all the way around. So it looks like I kind of have no choice. I have to go and buy one. Okay, so great news. It looks like there is just not enough room to get this wrench on. I can't, you know, the wrench is not enough angle in order to get on the bolt. The bolt is too sunken in to this, into the back here, so I can't get on it. What I really need is a longer coupling nut. That's what these, you know, the bearing presses usually come with. It's just a long coupling nut that you would use to connect two threaded rods together. I need that, and the problem is going to be finding that in this size. Okay, good news. I was able to find a 3/4 inch 10 coupling nut at my hardware store. I found this in the threaded rod section, by the way, so that's really good. And what's even nicer is that it fits a 1 inch wrench, so I can take back that 1 1/8 inch wrench that I just bought. Yeah, I'm gonna have a day of just going around to various hardware stores and returning things. So, go ahead and thread this on. Again, I want to make sure that that flat washer is centered. All right, got the wrench on the back here. give it a try. And it is working very nicely. That's it. All right, now we got a nice wheel hub pressed into our nice new wheel bearing. I will tighten the 4 bolts next. So it looks like I had some audio problems capturing the video just now on torquing these, but the torque setting is 74 foot-pounds, and I was able to get up behind there with the torque wrench and torque them. There's not a lot of travel, but it's possible to get it done. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the axle back in now. One thing I want to mention is, you know, thanks to California, I mean, look at those axle splines. They're just fine. This is very uncommon for a BMW. Usually BMWs, they rust like crazy, especially these axle splines. So if that's the case with you, I would suggest taking a wire brush to these splines and to the splines inside the wheel hub, because otherwise you're just going to have difficulty getting it in. And I think I can reach up from behind here. You know what? Maybe not. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and put the exhaust back up in. I'm gonna lower the jack now. All right, I cannot remember which wheel sensor is bad, if it's this side or the other side, and I can't figure it out right now. So I'm just gonna put this back together and clean it off a little. Okay. Put the, oh good Lord. I forgot to put this back on. Well, I'll tell you what, that really bums me out. That really bums me out. That means I have to take the axle, I have to take everything back apart in order to get that back on. Okay guys, I just cheated. I went and just cut this with my cutoff saw and then slipped it over the wheel bearing here. Yeah, I'm not redoing all this stuff. Screw that. I don't really care. This is just a dust shield. It's not gonna matter. The bolts are gonna hold it on. It's not gonna matter if there's a cut in the middle right there. Not making any difference whatsoever. So if you're a dumbass like me and you forgot to tighten the axle to the differential before you put this back on, don't worry about it. You can just unbolt it and turn it this way, and you can get at that, get your tool right in through the opening there, which is nice. The torque is about 74 foot-pounds on those bolts, and I knew it was enough when it screamed right there. So I've put the axle nut back on because I'm going to use that same trick I used before to use it to turn the axle so I can get on the next bolt. So I'm just going to do that for the other 5. So I have all 6 of them tight now, and now I can tighten up the axle nut. Yeah, pretty sure that's as tight as it'll go. I'm actually back at the original place where it was before I took it off, because I can see the indents are right where they were before. So I can just stake them down. this, I believe, is supposed to grab the back of the cable like that, and it just slips down like that, and then when it pulls, it just pulls this jaw out and up, and that's what spreads the shoes apart. Okay, I'm gonna try putting this end together first, slipping it over. This way that spring will just sort of keep it together. And I'll try to slip this spring on last. You can just slip this adjuster in like that. And so yeah, the trick is just getting the spring in there. And so I think it'll be a little easier if we get these up and locked into place. There's one. Okay, two. So I just need to pull this spring up into there. Although I don't think the spring is all the way in there. There we go. Okay. So those shoes will just center themselves up once we put the brake disc back on. Okay. I do want to replace this brake line, but that's going to be in a different video. Okay. The torque on these for the caliper bolt brackets is going to be really high, I know. And I'm just trying to give them a little bit of a head start. I'll see if I can torque them, if I can get things in there. Look up the spec in a second. Yeah, see, something's telling me that I'm not going to be able to get my torque wrench in here. I'm just making it as tight as I can. That's why I use a very long ratchet, so I can get super torque like that. Okay, I'm going to put the wheel back on, torque that to 103 foot-pounds, lower it down, take it for a test drive. Hopefully everything will be all right. All right, I just got back from my test drive and wheel bearing noise is now gone. So it's all fixed and it's all good. Yeah, this was, once again, a lot harder than I thought it would be. I thought because the bearing bolts in and out that, you know, it would just be that much easier, but having to drop the exhaust and then having to run to the hardware store 8 times to get just the right bolts in order to make my own homemade press and stuff, just that added a lot of time. But anyway, that's why I make these videos, so hopefully, you know, you won't have to go through what I went through. So anyway, if you're doing this job, good luck. Thanks for watching.